So the title of the video is Will Gold Reach 1300 in the next few weeks? So some of the things that I looked up along the weekend doing a little bit of research. I'm looking at high yield corporate bonds. You know that they really underperformed during the early part of this year as well as they started a yearly cycle low at the end of 2015. So with that said, we're going to take a look at that and see what's going on in the high yield market, because from there's a few things that are stemming from that I believe that can power gold as well as what's going on in the oil market. I think there's a huge relationship in that sense. We can also look at the relationship with the stock market. It is extremely overbought. I personally don't even like shorting the stock market because, as we've seen, there's a lot of things that are propping it up. So as of right now, I don't see too much downside in the stock market. There could be a small little sliver of a pullback. But I do see other things that we can look at that are going to help us make money. Maybe allocate a very small position on shorting maybe like a biotech stock or a QQQ, but really like a small position, maybe less than 10% of your portfolio, where I see that there's big opportunities, maybe taking a 25% stake in shorting oil, another 25 being long gold or gold miners, I would prefer actually, and then maybe taking a 25% position against bonds here, especially high yield bonds. If you could find a way to buy puts on HYG, and this is what I have here. So let's take a look at it from a weekly perspective, because I like to take a look. This is a strong trend line that it has. Now, for any reason, if it breaks, we are definitely going to see a weekly cycle low. But it'll be key next week to see if this trend line holds. Basically, we're going to see a weekly cycle low every 18 to 25 weeks. Usually, it's about 18 weeks. So they're pretty early, and they are bottoming and then moving the way up. So here we're at week 16. Last week we did see a push higher. So is this going to accelerate and push us up above this trend line to stay above the trend line? Or are we going to crack the trend line and see a potentially yearly cycle low in high yield bonds? If that happens, because interest rates are moving up, we could see more outflows out of the bond market, especially high yield bonds, and into either equities or even gold. So we're at week 17 last week, going into week 18. We could see another down week, break this trend line. Then we could see maybe another week or two of declining or declining high yield bonds in the value of those. So we'll see. We'll take a look at that. That's actually my trigger point. If I do see an opportunity, this is where I'm looking. This is the catalyst that can start generating everything. So with that said, how can we see an issue or a correlation with high yield bonds? Well, if you guys remember when oil was hitting its low sometime last year into 2015 and going into 2016, we saw that's where high yield debt got crushed, mainly because there's a lot of oil producers that are very, very highly levered thanks to the money printing and the cheap interest rates. But these guys took on a lot of debt, and their break even for oil, a lot of them are around $40. If it goes below 40, you could see a lot of these companies getting hurt, and that's where we see issues with companies not paying their debt. And by virtue, you're going to see high yield bonds start to collapse. Not saying there's a full collapse, but we could take a look at it and follow the trend and see what goes on. So let's take a look at just in fact oil futures going into next week. So a lot of people say you can draw a rising wedge, which I've done. So I just kind of left it as a little flag up here, little upward trend that I see here that's been lasting for about a whole year or so. But anyways, on the weekly model here, or let's start it from the very beginning to see what the counts are exactly. Here's one weekly cycle. Okay. From there, we'll count that as another weekly cycle. If we extend it, I think that's too far. But even if we extend it, we still need a bigger downside. So let's just say we get the weekly cycle to about 15 weeks. And then from here, we're going to week 17, so we still have a little ways to go down. What I'm looking at as well is that the 50-day is below the 200-day moving average. I want to see what happens here as well. Are we going to get another down week coming up? If you look at the daily chart, you can also see it's extremely oversold still. But I'm looking at a little flag that's potentially building here, and this could be a sideways action for a bit. Maybe even a rising wedge, to push that. But I think we're going to see a little flag, so there's not going to be a huge move in oil anytime soon. But I do see it going down further. Looking at the weekly cycle here, it barely reached our RSI of 5 here, down below, I believe, 30. The issue is that it's down here, but usually when it's in an uptrend, it bounces, okay, here off the 30 RSI, and then it has a strong move. You didn't see the bounce this time. So are we going to see a lot of casual moves down like we did here in 2016, where it stayed oversold and it still is trying to find a bottom? That may be the case. You can also take this trend line and show that rising wedge that everybody was talking about. Okay, you can look at that on the weekly. On the daily, it looks probably even worse. So let's take a look. Yeah. So, and just looking at this on, I think, Sentiment Trader, let's take a look here. I believe oil still has a way to correct a little bit. So, looking at oil. Of course, it's going to be slow when I'm recording a video, so let that load. But that looks pretty bearish at the moment. Now you also have the 50-day coming down, moving down this way. Probably going to have a cross on the 200-day moving average, which is going to be extremely bearish. That would be something to see. So, and like I said, if oil goes down, you're going to see high yield credit get crushed. And we still haven't seen excessive pessimism at all in oil. So I would like it to go down a little bit more in order to get, to start buying. So we'll see. Now, where are we at with QQQ? So this is extremely overbought in the stock market. Like I said, I'm not going to really short that much. It's going to be a small position, maybe something in biotech. I'd like to probably take a stab at, but we're extremely oversold. If you look at the weekly, we're due for a weekly cycle low. We haven't had one for good, let's see, if you count, you probably should start here, but you could probably start here to get, and you're at like, let's say you're right here. Start a new cycle. This is the huge, since the election, we've had about exactly 17 weeks. And the RSI is somewhere at 92. So it definitely needs a weekly cycle low, so a nice little pullback, which is going to bring in more buying, and I just see the stock market being strong, so there's no weakness there. Even if oil collapses, it's going to be positive for stocks, positive for the economy that we have cheaper oil, and they're going to keep drilling, so I don't see an issue there. So maybe small position in QQQ and maybe in biotech, shorting biotech, a very small position. But gold, so let's get to gold really quick because my computer's running out of battery. But if we take a look at the weekly here, you saw the trend line break. And the reason why I see us reaching 1300 is mainly because, let me remove this. So if we started here from December, we're barely at, 12 weeks in. If we can somehow over the next week and see high yield bonds collapse, oil collapse, a little pullback in the stock market, you're going to see gold catch a bid, especially that the dollar's definitely overbought and needs to correct. It's still got to have a few more cycles lower. With that said, gold is definitely not overbought. It's making its move up, and if you look on the daily, we still got a few more. We just barely reached a daily cycle low on what was the day? Early March, and we just barely started this. So this is where I see the next move up for the weekly cycle low. It could definitely push it up. Definitely 1250 is a given. 1260. We'll see resistance here at 1260. So let's put a little trend line there. 1260, and if we can make a push to 1300, that'd be awesome. Ultimately, this is the trend that you wanna watch. If it breaks this, then we're definitely moving to 1300. If not, then we'll have one more trend sideways before we can figure that out. So let's take a look. This is the trend that you got to watch. On the weekly, if that breaks, or the daily, you're definitely going to move to 1300. Depends how fast we break that. If by the next few days we break that trend line, 1260 is a given. Maybe go sideways for a day or two and watch it move within a matter of days to 1300. That's what I think. We're reaching overbought territory, but like I said, look at the last few times that it reached overbought territory. It stayed there for a little bit. Okay, we were oversold a little bit, but that was just because we had a weekly cycle correction, and that's normal. So we had a lot of selling pressure. But if we can move here and stay above overbought for a couple days, and I'm thinking maybe over the next 2 weeks, 1300 is definitely a place that I'm looking to, that gold needs to get to. So I don't see a problem there. So just to kind of recap, let's look at high yield debt. If that starts collapsing, that's definitely going to spark oil and gold, oil to move lower, gold to move higher. Stock market might correct a little bit. It just needs a breather. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to take a few small positions and see how it works out into the week. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Let's go Trojans, baby. Let's go fight on. So we'll see what goes on. Thanks, everybody.